Well. It's Wednesday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Bob Harris. It's time to go on the hot seat. But first, FootballGuys.com is where you'll find all my work. I appreciate you joining me here on the Old Football Diehards YouTube channel every Wednesday at this time and Saturdays at noon Eastern Time for the Ask Me Anything video live streams. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, all that stuff. Like us, dislike us, do all the, whatever the hell you want. We have a lot of faith in you, our loyal listeners. And by we, I mean, so I was looking at this video before it was set up, and I said, I do not usually let people as handsome as me in the thumbnails. Like, usually I have to be the dominant, handsome visage. And here we are with like maybe the most handsome man in America. Certainly the man of the week. If it's April, it's RSP season. That means Matt Waldman is on the hot seat. Matt, welcome, my friend, to the show.
I thank you. I appreciate the hyperbole. So there we go.
It's not like anything you don't hear all the time anyway. So Zara in the house, Brian Larkin, howdy, Jim, good evening, Royal Slade, my man in the house. Who do you expect? We'll get there. Oh, there has been a trade. Hi, Kevin Pate. Hi, hey, John Bonneville. Is this the handsome? Yes. Nobody can point the right way out for you. No. We have no idea how cameras work. Yeah. We're like unfrozen cavemen fantasy analysts going, oh. Matt, you are the man. Just want you to know that. Bob is the man of the hour. JSC, thanks for coming in. Appreciate everyone coming in. Hope our friend Andrea can make it. If you were here Saturday, you heard that she had surgery. She is out and she has responded to me. I hope she can show up, but everything's going well for her. So super happy to hear that. And also, just like not for nothing, heard a little bit from Emil Cadlick this week. He is also doing well. Treatments are going good. He's got some things going on at home that make me feel very happy about what he's got going. So, man, thinking all the best, and I know all you are as well. So let's touch base, Matt. I know, look, it's the rookie scouting portfolio, right? Came out Monday. I got a little sneak preview as I am quite fortunate to be a guinea pig on the purchasing end of things to make sure it all works. And it kind of did.
Couple blips here and there, and we appreciate those of you honest souls who let me know very quickly. Yes,
right. And so, but I got my early look at the rookie scouting portfolio. 1,153 pages of the most in-depth rookie analysis you'll find, and the design is fantastic. So you can kind of go through and, like me, I'm like immediately head for the rankings and comparison tables. I want to see who is who. Right. I want to see who is what and get those things. And then, as I learn more about the players, I can dig deeper. And there is no end to the depth of knowledge available in these tomes, people. I certainly hope you will all check it out. MattWaldman.com is where you can go to buy it. I'll let Matt talk a little bit more about it as well. But first, before we get into some of the rookie chatter that we are going to get into, we are going to talk about the Stefon Diggs traded. It was interesting. I was up late last night, doing my things, and I saw Stefon Diggs in my X feed yapping at someone who was telling him, they were talking about can Josh Allen be the quarterback he is without Stefon Diggs? And someone kind of said, well, kind of, yeah. And Diggs kind of came back with, oh, really? And now we all get to find out. Diggs is a Houston Texan. Big win for CJ Stroud, it seems like to me, Matt. But, just your assessment. We've all been paying, second and third round draft prices for all three of those receivers, depending on, how your drafts are playing out in early best balls. How comfortable? Well, those prices are going to change. Definitely. I mean, all your sunk costs are sunk, right? But how do you think that one plays out as we move into the draft season? How do you see people treating this?
I think that the way it should be treated is that we probably see Tank Dell's value drop a little bit, but not so far. It shouldn't be so far that you should be selling them at a huge discount. I think this is a chance that we could have at least three receivers in Houston who can deliver 800 to 1,000 yards. I think that that's a realistic expectation for this group, and that Stefon Diggs has the opportunity to be in that 1,200, really in that 1,100 to 1,300 yard range, and maybe a little higher. I think Nico Collins is probably the bigger loser in this expectation, because I always saw him as kind of a wide receiver too, who might have 900 to 1,100 yard seasons. And I thought last year was a little bit more of that above expectation, whereas Tank Dell's probably going to round out into that in that 800 to 1,000 yard range as kind of a slot. But he and Stefon Diggs, all three of them can kind of trade out in the slot a little bit. And for Josh Allen, I like what JSC is saying. I mean, he might not be fantasy QB1. He's going to be a starter QB1 top 20 based on volume and the skills that he has. But I'll just say, I think that Stefon Diggs, we know that Stefon Diggs wasn't happy in Buffalo. And I think a lot
Is he ever happy? I mean,
probably not. But I think he's a hard worker who knows that his time is ending in the NFL and he wants to make the most of it. So I think CJ Stroud over Josh Allen is probably one of those calls that obviously you don't have to draft CJ Josh Allen, at least not yet. But there's a possibility in August that we may be faced with that decision when the buzz machine really kicks in. But right now, CJ Stroud is probably going to be a little bit of a value still as maybe a top 5, low end of the top 5. And I like that possibility because, I think Diggs probably didn't like the late game mistakes that Josh Allen made and felt like Josh Allen could be more prepared, probably could be a little bit more professional, carry himself in a manner where maybe he didn't have to worry about Allen at important points. And I don't think he's going to have that problem with Stroud.
Yeah, I think so. It's obviously CJ Stroud's a big winner. And when I draft CJ Stroud over Josh Allen, CJ Stroud will never have the rushing touchdown equity that Josh Allen does. And I don't know that goes away. And some of this may be determined. I might not have many shares of Josh Allen until after the draft. We may talk about some of the possible additions right now, but Dalton Kincaid rises up immediately.
Khalil Shakir.
I mean, Curtis Samuel is someone that I draft really late in drafts. My fear for Curtis Samuel is this drives the price up and makes it a little harder to get him because I don't think you should be chasing him up the ADP ramp there, people. Be reasonable if he goes a little higher, sure, but he's going to have a role. We saw he had great success, or his most recent success came with Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator of Buffalo in Carolina. Some interesting thoughts out here. The Bills going in or not going in, and we'll talk about some of the wide receivers that are available. Adonai, is it Adonai?
Adani is how they say it, but okay. Adonai, I mean,
I thought I heard him say it like that. Mitchell,
he might have said that, and if he did, good for him because that's the way. That's the word.
Check. Yeah, I got to work with Dempsey, so I got to say names semi correctly.
Many call him just AD.
That's what I hear. AD. So great point by Royal Slade too. Diggs has not looked really great, and you wonder, how combustible a player like that can be if he's not getting his targets. You've all seen the gifts out there on your X feed of the Antonio Brown meltdown running through the end zone with no shirt. That's like Diggs the first time they target the other guys, and I mean, it's a fair to wonder. John Bonneville wonders if the Bills will target Ayuk. They might target him, but they can't pay him. They're $30 million. They take a $30 million cap hit. They're basically paying to get this guy off their roster, and that should tell you about where everything is at. Are they kicking Shakir outside? Is he capable, Matt, of playing outside?
I think he is. He's a very good contested catch player, and he's quick enough that I think he could be a nice flanker for the team. So the question is, flanker. He can be a flanker slot that you switch off with Samuel, and then you can get a classic X in this draft if you want to. I mean, there's certainly a lot of them available out there.
Right. This is a wide receiver heavy class. We're going to talk a little bit about that and some of the players that you like there, Matt. What's something in the fantasy? You've always found to be overrated in fantasy for me would be wide receiver 2s on NFL teams. I think when you sit here and just like when I read this comment on the surface, I think I want a wide receiver 1. And usually I want a wide receiver 3. I guess wide receiver 2s are sadly overlooked. Maybe they shouldn't be. Here's to all the wide receiver 2s in the world that JSC cannot stand. We love you guys. No, I mean, it does seem like the 3s are sexier than the 2s, right?
Yeah.
That's probably more of a mental thing, but it is kind of interesting.
Running back 2s are overrated, to be honest with you.
Yes.
You don't need a running back 2. Or really, sometimes you don't need a running back 1 if you got strong enough receivers. You just need one decent running back.
Right,
That's basically it. Yeah.
And so just, we'll get into running backs as well. I think it's, this is an interesting draft class in that everyone's going to be chasing quarterbacks. And I know, so we're not going to give away rookie scouting portfolio. Give me the pitch.
Basically, it's one of the most comprehensive looks at wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, and running back prospects you're going to find available to the public. It's one of the 2 most purchased draft guides for independent evaluation and cross-checking by evaluators in the NFL. Been doing it 19 years. And it's a basically choose your own adventure to see my scouting process. And you'll find that, I'll put it to you this way. I hate the Denver Broncos more than any team on existence times 10 as an old Cleveland Browns fan. And if 2 people interviewing to get scouting jobs with John Elway stopped me in the middle of a Starbucks at the Senior Bowl and turned their back on him while he was talking to say that they were geeking out over the work that I've done and they were former pro players, if they like it, the media likes it, and fantasy folks like it, you're going to like it. It's most people are really, I say, pleasantly shocked. And I'm obviously giving you the hard sell right now, but it's nothing that I'm going overboard with. Most people tell me, one, I undercharge by about 50% than what I should for it. And most people are blown away and their minds blown when they get it the first time and tell me they're lifetime customers. So.
I think you undercharge for it. I buy one for all my colleagues because it is so reasonably priced instead of making them buy. Like, I just think it's a invaluable resource. I look back to multiple years. I mean, I have them all. I look back multiple years, and sometimes you see a player rise up, and I say, well, where's he been? Why hasn't it happened? Many of my dynasty teams are the foundations are built on rookie scouting portfolios. I'm starting a draft right now. Thank you, Scott Barrett. Matthew Berry just made the first pick, Marvin Harrison Jr. In a super flex dynasty where we draft before the draft. So,
you're going to win this already.
It's been helpful. I'm totally in the running, but my top quarterback in the super flex is one Josh Allen. So I'll be eager to see what they do in the draft. I want to talk quarterback, Matt. I want to talk quarterback. And we're not going to give away all the goods. You got to go get the book and look it up yourself, people. The rankings are good. But Matt, I was always, independent. He works independent of the hive mind out there of draft analysts. And probably they should maybe try doing the same. Some of them do. Look, I'm not here to slog on draft analysts.
There's a lot of good guys out there.
But yes, and I love a lot of them. Like Dane Brugler, the Beast is fantastic. The Football Guys draft guide, rookie draft guide, I've been reading and getting up to speed on things. Great work there as well. So love all that stuff. But this is the one for me. And picking on running backs before knowing landing spots is very scary. Running backs are the hardest thing probably in this entire thing and in that league. But you always have an outlier or two, or you're going against the grain. And I think the guy that most interests me, because I think this is going to work out well for some teams. I know Royal Slade is in the room here, a big Patriots follower, and I feel like if you're really high, Michael Penix Jr. is your quarterback too. Yeah. So if you're a team like the Patriots and you're you have multiple holes to fill, and you go out and you draft that high end wide receiver with 3. You can come back later, and whether he makes it to round 2 or maybe you have to move up into the tail end of round 1 to land Michael Penix. What would you get in Michael Penix in your estimation? And what are you seeing that others aren't?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think there's a couple of things to say here about the quarterback class overall. And that's that there's one the NFL we know overall is really bad at, they would have a failing grade in school for developing quarterbacks or picking quarterbacks in the first round or really at any point. And they haven't figured out, I think more than anything, that the quarterback position is a performance position, not a scientific position. And so trying to do a lot of different modeling with quarterbacks, there's too many variables. And a lot of them are about integrating skills to be able to be very fast and timely with delivering solutions. And it's something that a Wonderlic or even some of these processing tests are far behind. At least they're trying to figure out processing now. So with that said, with this class, there's one guy who's childproof. If I'm joking that the NFL are mere children trying to figure out this very tough position, we all are. It's very tough. I have a tough time with it too. I've had a good track record lately, but it's not easy. And so that's Caleb Williams. They might not screw that up. The guy after everyone else after that probably would ideally need like at least 12 to 15 games to sit before they really get that opportunity to play. The guy I'm probably most comfortable with having less than that, because that's how the NFL is going to be, is Michael Penix. Because what makes Michael Penix different than most of the other quarterbacks that are on the board that are going to be rated higher than him is that he is a good pocket player who has dealt with a ton of pressure since he was at Indiana, in ways that often are destructive for the processing capabilities of their games. And he's not only survived it, he's thrived in it. He's someone that really doesn't make a lot of bad decisions, even when heavily pressured. He has the athletic ability to get away from pressure, but he's also better at moving into the pocket when it comes to climbing the pocket efficiently and finding solutions in the middle of the field that a lot of people don't see. Now, there are more and more people starting to see it. Chase Daniel, the former longtime backup in the NFL, wrote yesterday, if you don't see that Michael Penix is a top 3 quarterback, you don't know ball.
Right.
And
saw that tweet.
And it's fascinating. I think a lot of it is that a lot of these teams, a lot of what we're going to see in draft analysis is about predicting round. A lot of my peers who do this, they evaluate players and they do a good job of identifying strengths and weaknesses. And the challenge for all of us is projecting what we can't see fully to the NFL. But what happens is that they also try to predict the draft. And so they're always trying to predict draft capital. And they look at these things that shouldn't matter as much as they do, except for NFL owners, which is, how do we justify our pick in the face of if it fails and we don't get fired? And Penix, with 2 ACL tears and 2 shoulder injuries, and being a 6th-year guy, those are all things that are strikes against his draft capital. And as a result of that, he's going to be lower on the board in the same way that Patrick Mahomes was lower for playing in a spread offense and air raid that wasn't a big-time school and having some things that maybe weren't quite as good, or Brock Purdy falling, or Tom Brady, or a bunch of other players, Brett Favre, because he was at Southern Miss. I mean,
Drew Brees.
Drew Brees, not the, yes, perfect example. So yeah, he would be a good fit in New England in terms of getting the pick late in the draft, late in the first round, or trading down or trading up from the second round, or even waiting for the second round.
Right.
I love the Vikings mention that our guest mentioned, that are, because the Vikings to me would be the ideal team.
For the reason John's hinting at here, you've got that supporting cast. It's wired high. Kevin O'Connell, that offense as well. We've heard, there are a lot of rumors out there that they like somebody else. I know our colleague Cecil Lammy over Football Guys has some pretty firm ideas. And I don't know that you like all of his ideas. Drake May might be one of those. And maybe you're a little lower than the consensus on. JJ McCarthy's another one who I find interesting, Matt, mostly because I didn't see anyone really talking about JJ McCarthy as a potential top 4 or 5 quarterback until Jim Harbaugh said it. I mean, like, he's kind of invested, right? And we look back at the pass rate at Michigan last year, it was like 43%. It's the lowest, it was like 117th in the nation. And, they won the national title not by throwing the ball. And the history of not going heavy for, Harbaugh quarterbacks, has been noticeable too for Herbert fans. But what is everyone seeing in JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, first of all, I agree that Drake May will probably end up on the Vikings, because to me, you look at who they got as in free agency as their backup quarterback who might bridge as a starter, and the physical archetype of Sam Darnold is what Drake May is. Now, it's what they're hoping is that Drake May isn't like Sam Darnold and what we've seen in the NFL, but I'm afraid some of the same issues may be there. Now, in terms of McCarthy to me is more of a risk taker who makes a lot of good risk-taking decisions, but it has to get rid of the bad ones to me. And I agree with Andrew about Michael Penix, by the way. If Senior was around, there's no way that they would let Michael Penix get away from them.
I believe he's visiting the Raiders today. He's visited the Broncos and the Raiders. And so we'll see how it plays out. The Raiders not ruled out of the quarterback mix. I know they signed Gardner Minshew. They've been saying really great things about Aiden O'Connell. I talked to Hondo Carter from SI.com who covers them. He thinks Antonio Pierce, this is a big locker room issue, that Aiden O'Connell should get the chance because it's the guy that the players, feel like got the job done late last year. I don't know how invested they might all be in that if somebody comes along who's a lot better. But also something you talk about a lot is letting these guys sit for a season. I mean, I think you're a big advocate of that, and we don't see it very often. And maybe I don't know. Would he sit behind Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew? I don't know if that's necessarily the case there, but
I don't think so either. But they would probably let there be a bit of a competition and go from there. But I mean, when you talk about McCarthy, McCarthy's a guy that has some really great highs, but he also has some lows that need, that need correcting. He red zone has some really bad decisions in the red zone and on a consistent basis. There's times that he really looks like he knows what he's doing when it comes to reading the field and making the quick decision to process. And there's other times where it looks like it was a total accident or a bad decision. But he's pretty good in the pocket. He's got great footwork, a lot of fundamentals to work with that could help him improve in that way. Now, I would joke if Jim Harbaugh were Buddy Ryan and had the stones of Buddy Ryan, he'd just trade Justin Herbert and he'd put his money where his mouth is and get himself some JJ McCarthy. But we know nobody in their right mind would do that.
Interesting. What would it take? What would it take? What would you have to give Justin Herbert? Because I mean, like I've heard that one thrown around. In fact, I discussed it with Fabiano yesterday on his podcast. He's doing the kind of the April Fools things that we kind of love to see, but I've seen that kicked around and also seen it kicked around with Minnesota being in the discussion as well. Boy, that seems like a huge reach. Justin Herbert. I mean, I think our fears as fantasy managers, he's going to languish in this offense. I don't know that's necessarily the case. He's a very good player. I realized that, even when he had really good quarterbacks, he wasn't pass heavy, Jim Harbaugh, but you go back to San Diego State with Josh Johnson, Andrew Luck threw the ball a fair amount at Stanford, although not like crazy over the top numbers. But I mean, part of it is they're successful and they get ahead, or at least that's what's happened in San Francisco. So we'll see. My angst, like my dynasty shares are of Herbert aren't going away for any of those reasons. Give me the outlier quarterback that everyone should be looking at, but probably aren't.
Well, it was Penix at this point, but that's kind of growing. Growing in terms of the consensus, or like people starting to see that maybe he is worthwhile. I really don't think that there's an outlier that we should be paying attention to short term, but long term, I would say Jordan Travis is one of those guys that could be like a journeyman who's pretty good, like maybe if it all works out, a Jeff Garcia, Jeff Blake kind of combo, guy with a big, ability to throw the ball sky high and give receivers a chance to win it, but some of the mobility that Blake and Garcia both have in the pocket and a creative ability and willingness to target players in tight windows in a smart way. I would say he's probably the closest as an outlier who could maybe surprise in 2 to 3 years as at least a 1-year bridge starter who gives you fantasy production. And then another team goes, yeah, that was fun. Let's time to put you back in the box.
This Joe Milton is a name that's popping around as well. Spencer Rattler, people have talked about him before we get off into another position here. It feels like Spencer Rattler is a guy that kind of like another divisive play. Penix is as well. I mean, like you think the arm talent would win out, but people have pretty wide views on Spencer Rattler too, who seems to be able to spin it, as the kids would say.
Yeah, he does, and he's improved his game a fair bit, but he's much better in man-to-man than he is zone. And that's he's going to have to really work on that because he does not read the field well. He reads the field well with one really well, and the other, it's not good at all. So he's going to need a little bit of time. But I think that there's something there with him where he could become a low-end starter within a couple of years if the work ethic is there and he figures out, how to acclimate to the game. Because I don't think he's an unbelievable athlete, but kind of like Baker Mayfield, if you give him enough schemed, manufactured types of looks and then he continues to grow into how he reads defenses, especially pre-snap and early post-snap, he might be able to evolve to a point where we see what Baker Mayfield's done in his career. And if you give him really good weapons like Mayfield had, suddenly you're looking at fantasy value.
Right. So if you just tuned in, everybody, he's Matt Waldman. I'm Bob Harris. You can hear us every Monday as well on the aptly titled Feel It or F It podcast, where we swear a lot, and it's delightful. Most joyous to unleash the inner barbarian here. But we do some quick takes on the news of the week and everything. So that we do that every Monday all year round. So check that out. Very enjoyable. Time well spent. Matt Waldman, RSP, is the rookie scouting portfolio is like, I think Matt's downplaying the notion that there are owners, NFL owners, who read this publication. I have it on good authority. So, I mean, it's like decision makers and the people who make a difference. So, and I'm one of them, or I'm a fantasy owner, but actual NFL owners as well. So check that out. MattWaldman.com is where you can purchase it. I highly recommend it. There's no product I enjoy more every year. It's like super joyous. So check that out. Wide receiver class, super high end. I don't want to give away all the goods again, but I'm going to give away the real goods. I mean, you have Malik Neighbors at the top of your wide receiver list. I don't think you're alone in this, but tell us why.
Because, when I evaluate players, I'm not evaluating for a specific team. So it's really about not only who has the deepest range of talent, but also all the things that you look for in wide receivers. How much of it can they do at a high level? And so, it's not a huge difference between him and Marvin Harrison and Rome Odunze, who are my top three. But the things that he does well across the board, he does better than just about everybody. His release work, which is so important in the NFL against tight man coverage. The reason Stefon Diggs was so good and so important for Josh Allen and for a few years is that you have to win sometimes on routes where the defender knows it's coming. Everybody in the stadium knows it's coming, and it's a one-on-one game. And his ability he has a really great toolbox of moves, and he knows how to apply them with just expert skill. There's an artistry to being able to apply footwork and hand counters, both off the line and at the top of the stand. He has them. He's dynamic in the open field. He is tough. He can get ping-ponged around by defenders. So all that together, he may not be as good of an all-around athlete in terms of size and athleticism as Rome Odunze, but he's the most technically skilled guy with the high-end speed you're looking for and the hands and toughness you're looking for. He can play all three positions if you need him.
So I've heard some people argue, again, Bloom and Lammy were talking about this the other day on the Audible, which you guys should all listen to on the Football Guys YouTube channel. And by the way, check out my weekly in the NFL News week thing. I'll be talking about this Stefon Diggs trade this week for sure, and a few other things as well. Short little digestible bit where you can catch up on all the week's news in like about 10 minutes. So check that out every Friday. But
that's awesome.
Bloom and Lammy, we're having a discussion where maybe the Cardinals, Bloom calls it the Austin Fort, the move back and then the move back up, collecting draft capital. We saw it last year. They went from 3 to 12 to 6 and, got their guy, added some capital. And that maybe the history of the team as they prefer the bigger bodied receiver, and Rome Odunze is certainly that. Talk a little bit about his attributes and what makes him stand out from the crowd.
Well, I laugh because now I'm finally getting a chance to check out some of my colleagues' work. And I saw that Matt Harmon's comparison for him was the same one I have, which is Devontae Adams. Big enough, great in the open field, good contested catch player, strong at the boundary to earn position and win the ball. And he's a good route runner. I mean, he has the artistry with his routes too. He's not as diverse or as maybe expert at the level Malik Neighbors is, but he's certainly is above that line of instant starter. I mean, he can be an instant starter in this league as long as he's not drafted to a team where the system is wonky, and there's some existing starters of note who just haven't left yet. But he's that guy that should be considered the heir apparent to be the primary for a team. And he has all the tools you're looking for to be an elite wide receiver in this league.
as does Marvin Harrison. So moving outside those top three, who are some players we should have our eyes on as dynasty managers, maybe guys that can contribute this year?
I think, Ricky Pearsall is one that's kind of sneaky good. He's someone for, and that Fitzgerald's an interesting one, but Odunze is more explosive. I'll put it that way. But the ability to win at the catch
I've
is a
heard that
good
one as
one,
well.
John.
Yep.
That's a good one. I actually had Harrison more as Larry Fitzgerald as the top end that he may never reach, but he may get closer than a lot of players do. But, Ricky Pearsall, very fast, very good at being able to earn separation outside, can play inside, is used to playing with quarterbacks who can create in and outside the pocket. He did it with Anthony Richardson and did it well. Love to see him reunited there if that's possible. Excellent hands, aerial artistry is there. Javon Baker of University of Central Florida, former Alabama recruit, good hands, good routes, good skill after the catch. A physical player for his size, just needs to clean up a lot of little things, but he could be an instant starter. I mean, to me, if I like Jaden Reed and I thought he might need a little bit of time, but once he gets onto the field, he could contribute in a tight sort of window. And that's what they did with him as a slot last year. I think this kid's, got as good of, not a better chance than that. Malik Washington, actually Jermaine Burton. If Jermaine Burton to me is the guy that I think Chris Harris, when he was reading the RSP, said he's a doubles hitter. That's what it sounds like you're saying. And because he can do everything well, right. And I compared him to Robert Woods. And I think that he's one of those guys that really could be good year one for a team and will surprise a lot of players because of his route running. He's got a nasty streak as a player, likes to play physical ball, smart about it, though. He doesn't have that hot head that like Steve Smith had early in his career. I don't think to that extent. He may bait people, but he doesn't go nuts over it. And he can win deep. He can win after the catch, and he's a good route runner himself. So those guys, Cooper Kupp, not Cooper Kupp, Lad McConkey obviously is a big name there too. So those are some guys, and I could probably name a lot more because there's like 17 that are like really good in this class.
Rosley brings up Luke McCaffrey, the lineage. There's a lot of guys, young Rice in this. I mean, talk about any of those guys. I feel like they're kind of outliers right now, but they do seem to be getting a little more buzz.
Yeah, McCaffrey's a guy that's probably not quite ready to play outside on a permanent basis because his routes and his releases need to get a little bit better. But he has enough route running skill, the athletic ability, the skill after the catch, and the hands are all good enough. If you can get him in the slot more often and then occasionally use him as a matchup threat on the outside, he could be helpful to you. I did say, yep, it was. And what's funny is I think Kupp is a much better player, was a better prospect than McConkey in terms of being able to release from the line of scrimmage compared to McConkey. But McConkey is going to be very good early in his career as a slot player where he's not going to have to use his hands as often. And if he proves that he can do it, he'll be an outside option for sure. So, yeah, I mean, guys like that certainly are worthwhile. I think who was the other guy I was going to say? Malik Washington is interesting. Brendan Rice. Yeah, Brendan Rice, I would joke, he needs to he's got that curse of the youth where he looks at his dad and says, oh, he's not all that. He wasn't all that. Because every time I see him on some show, he's dogging his dad. Justin Jefferson's better than Jerry Rice. The whole youth thing that goes on. And part of me, if I were an NFL interviewer, I'd kind of want to joke around and say, start off and go, dude, you really got to watch your dad, because what's your problem that you actually legitimately think the greatest of all time is not as good as a modern player right now? Do you have daddy issues? What's wrong with you? But and just see if he'd laugh at me. But yeah, he's a solid player. Good, decent routes. Very good after the catch. He's really good at getting his feet up over defenders. I think the Xavier Hutchinson one isn't bad as what he kind of is. And I can understand that one and see why you would kind of fade him, because he's not he's a guy that will probably be a wide receiver 3, maybe low end wide receiver 2 in fantasy if everything hits well. He's not a future number 1.
Yeah, I think we just talked about Javon Baker, and you are very high on him. So, and by the way, if you've asked about some running backs, I see those questions, and I will circle back around to them when we're talking about running backs. So we'll work through the wide receiver discussion here before we get into the running backs, and we'll jump into tight ends. Again, Matt Waldman, you find him on the X at Matt Waldman, and it's fantastic. There's a ton of information in his X feed. Unlike some others like mine, which is just utter nonsense. And so check him out. And again, mattwaldman.com is where you want to go to purchase your rookie scouting portfolio. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Now, if they saw your Facebook feed, they would be much richer for that.
True.
I'll just say
true.
Yeah.
There is my
Facebook feed is non-existent in comparison.
Mine is where it happens.
Yes.
No worries, Andrew. Yeah, circle back around because we did get into him, and Matt is very high on him and likes what he sees from that young man. Just a general talk about wide receivers. There was a time where wide receivers were not guys that came in and became immediate contributors. Is this just as simple as colleges running more pro-style offenses? Is that we're just seeing an advanced, development of these players that's starting way earlier than it has in the past?
I think that's a close assessment. I would probably reverse it and say NFL teams are running more college-based offenses as a result because they've adopted the spread a lot more. And so what that means is that the need to block isn't as big. There's more quick hitting routes. There's more of these back shoulder, rely on athletic ability type of plays. And the NFL has gotten easier on receivers because they're not getting mugged at the line of scrimmage. You don't have Mel Blount suplexing you belly to back, so there's part of that. And then on top of that, and as John mentioned about the 24 wide receivers, I always joke there's a fudge factor. So if you divide that number probably by like 6, that's probably how many wide receivers you're actually going to have who are going to be worth anything in fantasy due to injury, all sorts of other factors. So even then, 4 receivers is pretty strong, over the long term. But also about wide receivers is that there's more specialized training now, and they're getting it earlier, where that training is on footwork and route running and ability to earn position, and that those specialized lessons in coaching allows players to be more pro ready than they ever have before. And it's just starting to really take root now, because around the Equanimeous St. Brown draft, where that was the signal that teams were like, we're no longer drafting Des Bryant types. And St. Brown was like, no offense to Mike Mayock, but Mike Mayock had him like as a top 5 receiver. And that's when he was barely drafted at the end. And it was like when the worm turned, and that's fine. It happens to all of us. But I think that that point people were saying, well, how come, we're not seeing these receivers be as skilled? I had scouts say that. And I think it's part of it is you just needed a delayed effect, just because some of these guys got that training around the Equanimeous St. Brown draft class didn't mean that they were truly ready to go. More of these guys are figuring it out sooner. And so it's a combination of all those factors.
Or they're going to LSU. Apparently,
there you go. Yeah,
apparently
there you go.
That's the key to riches wealth. Any Division II wide receivers you've got your eye on there, Matt?
There's this kid. I'm trying to remember his name because it's been a while that I've looked at my thing. I can find him real quick. Where are we here? Division II. Nobody that really stands out unbelievably. But there's a kid that maybe in a little bit of time, Jalen Coker out of Holy Cross, he's closer to a high-end contributing role than a lot of people might realize. He's a little on the slow-ish side for a wide receiver, but he could be a flanker and it work out for him, or a big slot. And he's got a little bit of that Dontavian Wicks potential to his game that could maybe grow a little bit more. Hayden Hatton out of Idaho is interesting for the fact that he does win the ball reasonably well, but I think he's got a lot more work to do. Maybe Jeremiah Hickson, a 5'11", 167-pound guy who moved on to New Mexico Division I in his final year and maybe Ryan Flournoy is another one to consider, slot flanker who could develop, maybe kind of be in that Marquez Callaway kind of tier of player if he can continue to grow.
All right, let's move on to the running back position. You can throw other questions in there if you haven't, people. We'll get back around to them if we have time. John Bonneville. So this is a player, Audric Estime. Is that how I say it? Will Dempsey get mad at me for that one? Estime. So he did have a lousy combine, but a better pro day. How much do we put into that? Because I mean, like the friendly clock hands and things at pro days, or Sean Tucker. He pointed out, who was kind of the darling of the rookie free agent class last year, and we haven't not seen much from him. Not that he's vanished or anything; he's still around, but maybe take some time. How do you feel about Estime?
Yeah, first let's talk about Tucker real quick, just because he had a heart condition, and that's what really dropped him. It wasn't so much his times. And he got signed to a pretty lucrative contract for UDFA.
The most of in the league last year.
Yeah, so he's a guy they think can be a contributor at some point, I believe. But when it comes to Estime, look, 40 times at pro days, all NFL scouts have like a database on which surfaces are faster or slower, and they have a fudge factor for that when they look at those times. He's somewhere in between his combine and pro day, which is enough to be above the Mason-Dixon line for a contributor on the field at running back. He's a very powerful back. He's someone that has good feet and the ability to get over tackles. He's kind of got that inevitable power because he's not so fast, but he's just quick enough that he's hitting the hole coming downhill, and you see the guy at the other side, and he's going to run through him, run over him, or drag him for a little bit of time. So I think he's got the capability to be kind of a Gus Edwards type of role player or a Mike Anderson type of player way back in the day, or someone who, what Kareem Hunt did with Nick Chubb on the on the side, just without maybe the same receiving skills. Someone who can contribute, have a role, give fantasy production, but not necessarily be the guy right off the bat, and maybe not for the remainder of his career.
All right. So, and this is a good question here because I think, it's probably a good question because I could have just as easily asked it. Superflex Dynasty Street team, very strong, young everywhere, but running back, 5 picks in the top 20 in the rookie draft. What would be your approach with running backs given these circumstances?
Yeah. And as I talked about the fudge factor with wide receivers, this is something I cover in the rookie scouting portfolio with each chapter about the classes to give advice like this. With the running back class, the difference between a good running back class and a great running back class after looking back at every year in the past 10 years is basically plus or minus 1 back, and the average is 2 backs. So a good class, average class is 2 backs that are decent. A good class is 3. A bad class is 1. Do you really want to hope that you hit on one of these backs? Especially when maybe arguably the top back in this class needs a redshirt year due to injury. My recommendation to you is, with this receiver class being as strong as it is, and the quarterbacks being decent, if it's not a super flex draft, it is super flex. The super flex, you can go wide receiver and quarterback. I would probably go wide receiver because they're the safest bet. Stockpile. I don't care if you already have 5 good starters. If you can get 3 or 4 good receivers in this class and they work out for you, then you're going to be able to trade for whatever quarterback or running back you want. I've had success with that multiple times, even in non-super flex leagues, stockpiling Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes. And I was able to trade Russell Wilson for Nick Chubb. I was able to trade Jared Goff. No, was it Jared Goff? I think. Yeah, it was Goff and a pick to get Myles Garrett in an IDP league. I was able to get also keep Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and still wind up getting Jonathan Taylor through a trade. So, those are ways. it's just better. You don't even have to worry about whether this guy's going to make it or not. You get the established thing. So definitely stockpile.
By the way, Nick Chubb, you're a running back 1 in 2018, ahead of a chap named Saquon Barkley. One of those outliers picks by you that worked out reasonably well, I would say. So you mentioned in passing, you referred to the running back probably going to need a redshirt year, and that's Jonathan Brooks. A lot of Cowboys fans.
I don't blame them.
Right. So, but I mean, like, what should our expectation be? I mean, I heard someone talking today saying, well, it looks like he'll be ready for the start of training camp. Okay, maybe he will be, but what lessons have we not learned over the last couple of years about players coming off ACLs? Is like, this is not their best year. This is one of the reasons, like, look, I'm not like overly enthusiastic about Javonte Williams, but at the price, I think he's in line for a rebound year. Full year removed from that injury. I know I talked to Parker Gabriel from the Denver Post this week, told me not to get too excited. It's going to be a lousy offense in Denver. So that's a factor as well. Cowboys might be a better offense, but you worry wherever Brooks lands a little bit that it's going to be a slow start, right?
Yeah, I was thinking you were going to say, have we not learned from Tony Pollard last year with his injury? It was a slow start.
Fair enough. Yeah. With this more severe injury, I mean, I think or slower to recover injury.
For sure. And so ACL. It would be ideal if he sat for a year. But he had the injury in November. They're probably going to be eager to at least give him some playing time. And if he looks good, they'll let him play through it. And the hope is, being young, only having 1 year as a starter, he'll recover quickly and look pretty darn good, and then be even more amazing the next year. And Brooks is to me, if you think of what the hype was for Melvin Gordon, which was probably a little unjustified, but a hard runner who could win after contact. People thought he was faster than he actually was. I think Jonathan Brooks is actually fast enough. And I like what John's bringing up about what you like 1 year or the other in terms of, I feel like my running back 1 this year would be RB7 last year, or even similar range. I'd say no. I think Jonathan Brooks would be up there with Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. I would feel good about that. But I would say that the difference between my running back 2 and my running back 12 is pretty small. So a guy, if a guy gets into a good landing spot and corrects one small thing or 2 things about their game that are correctable, they could wind up being one of the most productive rookies in the class.
You have a number of guys in your list that are not reflected in the consensus, and I'm going to just randomly pick one here, and you're going to talk about him. Kamani Vidal.
If to me, the people who had all the hype on DeAndre Swift before he was found out as being a good NFL running back, who's a limited NFL running back and needs a lot of help around him to get high-end fantasy totals, what they thought they were seeing was actually a glimpse into the future of what Kamani Vidal could bring if he gets the draft capital and lands with a decent team. And there's growing sentiment that he might do that because he's a good pass protector. He's faster. He's fast. He's more powerful than DeAndre Swift. He's a better inside runner who can do more versatile work behind blocking schemes than Swift does. Swift is like a draw play, open space runner who you toss the ball to and do what they did with Cordero Patterson in Atlanta, which is like, get you in space, But Vidal's a guy that you can run in tight boxes and you should expect him to get yards. And with a couple of years, I think he has a shot to be a contributor of value, if not a starter.
Yeah, I think this year's rookie scouting portfolio is littered the upper end of the running back scale with many names that maybe are not household names, but very intriguing and very interesting. So especially if you are looking to land one of those backs later, going back to the previous question where you have all that draft capital, wait a little longer and take some chances on some of these guys while you're stocking up on the high end at wide receiver and quarterback and maybe tight end. Because there are more than one tight, like everyone's got their, Brock Bowers is the apple of everyone's eye. We get it. He's very good. He's very, here we go. Blake Corum. We hear a lot of this, right? John is throwing it out there for the obvious reason, for the same reason somebody might suggest that Justin Herbert could be traded, and then J.J. McCarthy could wind up, because Jim Harbaugh will be doing a collection of all the people who won him a national championship last year at his new home. And I also get the quarterback talk to resetting the clock on the money makes sense. You've got a huge, number for Justin Herbert, or at least a big number now that he's on his second contract. So I get all that. I just don't know how realistic it is. But the tight ends. Tell us about the tight end that you think, not named Brock Bowers, that everyone's going to be talking about here soon enough.
I think it's Ben Sinnott. 6'4", 250, maybe not the tallest dude, but if you want a shot at maybe another Sam Laporta type season, he could be that candidate. He is a very physical runner after the catch who also can make you miss. He's got that type of contact balance to work through hits from linebackers and defensive backs and carry them downfield or just shed them outright. He'll hurdle people if he needs to, but he's not too immature about it. Very good hands, better routes than people realize. He's a decent blocker for yes, it was. His combine was fantastic. He's a decent blocker for a move tight end. He is not necessarily a great inline tight end. And I was talking earlier today on Bloom's show on the couch. Yeah, that really, I've learned that probably next year I'm going to be separating out move tight end blocking skills from inline tight end blocking skills, so that guys who have move tight end blocking skills don't get punished for something that they're not going to be asked to do in the NFL, and vice versa. So I think that's probably on my agenda pretty quickly. Theo Johnson's a fun one to talk about, because as an athlete, Royal Slade, he just glides when he's in the open field. He has that gliding speed and acceleration. He's got good size. He has good hands. There's some skills with routes there, and he can be physical, though he needs some work in line. And the reason he needs work in line is not just as a blocker, but as a guy who releases from the line of scrimmage. His footwork against savvy off coverage, savvy tight coverage, and defenders, his footwork is bad. He needs work on developing a plan, and he doesn't look like he has a plan using his feet. If he can correct that, he'll play much faster and play to his combine times. And I think he can do it. It's just a matter of whether he understands that's the thing he needs to work on and has the team around him that will help him do it, because it's not the NFL team, but the team of people he will hire, if he hires anybody, to work with him on those private lessons, because that's really where the best players get into it. Or is he going to be that third-year player who goes to George Kittle's TE camp and then figures it out?
So you mentioned something earlier. You'd be the Laporta. Can Laporta be the Laporta again? I keep thinking, I think we're overdrafting him, right? Because we're drafting him based on a double-digit touchdown season. That seems less likely than another double. I don't know that that's going to happen. And if I want to invest, what do I preach on this program, Matt Waldman? I preach volume. And if I'm preaching volume, why isn't Trey McBride 3 rounds later the pick to make?
I think that you've answered. That's a rhetorical question, because it is for sure. But I agree that Laporta probably is overvalued as much as I like him. I think that the reception volume and yardage volume could be the same, if not higher. But to count on 10 touchdowns, that's a tough call. It's possible because he's such a good route runner and be a primary receiver for that team. Because I don't think Jameson Williams is going to grow into that. He's going to be a vertical guy, and Amon-Ra and him are complementary.
Right. And that's if you're out there going, oh, Bob, why are you talking smack about Sam Laporta? He's fantastic. He is fantastic. But this is more about the price than about what he is.
It's a smart to go with McBride. I agree.
All right, everybody, we're going to wrap this up here shortly. Again, go to mattwaldman.com and to get the rookie scouting portfolio, the 19th season of this. Is my sound okay, people? I played back Saturdays. My sound was horrible.
You sound great here.
You sound great too. I don't know. I know this technology is vexing, Matt Waldman. If you're old people like me, you would struggle with it as well. Great insights. It is great insights by Matt Waldman. It's always great insights. Again, if you don't listen to the Feel It or F It podcast, you should listen to it every Monday. We do it year round and get into some good stuff. Here we go. The Ras Masters, Johnny Woods and Zach Kuntz. I mean, like if the Jets don't pick a tight end, right? Like, I mean, I've talked to Andy Vasquez from NJ.com, and we kind of threw out the Brock Bowers possibility. He said it is like probably within the realm. He thinks they'll go wide receiver before they go tight end or ahead of that. But what is Kuntz? Is he like, should he totally be out of the picture?
No, not necessarily. He could learn. I mean, I think that, certainly there's moments that are strong with his game, and you can see the potential to develop into a good player. But he's one of those guys that you're going to want to see proof of concept before you go big. And proof of concept for fantasy will be a camp where people talk about how improved his route running is, and that he's matching up well against opposing cornerbacks of the Jets and beating them one-on-one. If you hear that, and that Aaron Rodgers is hitting him on timing routes, not the athletic, I'm going to win the ball over the head routes, but like comebacks and curls and dig routes. And you're hearing that as like, and they're going to, and people aren't going to go nuts about that. The Jets writers will probably just go, okay, yeah, he just caught a curl against this top corner. He just beat press against this guy. Those are the bigger things than, oh, he just skied over that safety and won. Well, he's supposed to do that at his size and his athletic ability.
There we go. John Bonneville, never lacking for a smart-ass comment that I enjoy immensely. So we didn't prep for this, but just like,
yeah,
let's go with this. Like, we went with Kuntz. Are there any second-year guys that you feel like should be like well positioned, or maybe that we're on the verge? Like, I look at some of the Packers receivers. I think that's an obvious starting point there. But are there any players you think that like really have a chance to excel this year based on like late season runs or anything?
I mean, I think there's some guys that you should keep an eye on. Let's start with running backs. Okay. Down. Tony Pollard certainly is the guy there, but Tajay Spears showed enough that you should not give up on Tajay Spears.
Rand Carthon's comments on him before they acquired Tony Pollard tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Right. Go back and look for his press conference. Basically said he is the shizzle without the zill. So I mean, he seemed to be all on board on that. So I was a little surprised that they got Pollard, but I hear you there.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to protect their assets, knowing that Tajay Spears had an injury history and they need continuity. Zach Evans, I'm not giving up on Zach Evans. Kyron Williams obviously is going to be a top draft pick. But I was told by somebody that we know that a player on that running back core was asked about Zach Evans, and he said, Zach Evans is the man. We don't know why he didn't get more opportunities. Okay. So Zach Evans still believe in his ability. Certainly Kendre Miller, maybe over Jamal Williams, as good as Williams is. Zach, we've already talked about Zach Charbonnet. So there's some guys there. Deuce Vaughn might be someone to keep an eye on just because he's a savvy, good football player. He might get a little bit more opportunity there. Chase Brown for sure. Absolutely Chase Brown for sure. Then when we're taking a look at Parker Washington's intriguing to me, for the Jaguars. Yeah, the fact that he's developed a little bit of a rapport was a nice thing for us. And then, Marvin Mims obviously is going to really get his shot, and he is deserving of that. I'm kind of interested in Kayshon Boutte. I'm not really quite ready to give up on him totally, because I remember when
Royal Slade.
I remember good because Ramondre Stevenson. I remember when he teased in training camp as a rookie, had a decent first game, then fumbled away, and you didn't see him until the end of the year. And then year two, he went off. And Mr. Scampers, I'm going to give you a little love, which is, I know it's a smart ass comment about Royce Freeman, though. The guy who said it was Royce Freeman. I think I'm safe enough to say that.
I think you are.
So Royce Freeman was like, I don't know. He's the man. Like, we all think he's the man. We don't know why he's getting more playing time. And this was like mid-season. So from that standpoint, those are some wide receivers that certainly get an opportunity. Tight ends from last year, because there were some guys that, well, that was 2 years ago. Okay, here we go. I mean, I know a lot of people.
It's Michael Mayer.
Michael
It
Mayer
has
is
to be
certainly
Michael Mayer.
nice.
I've been getting
But
tons of shares. I need it to be him.
yeah, Josh Wiley might be fascinating.
Okay.
I like that kid in terms of the athletic ability, situational, pretty good. The guy that's going to Musgrave certainly is on that list. Braden Willis, to me, if George Kittle gets hurt, Braden Willis out of Oklahoma could maybe earn that role a little bit, and it would be fascinating to see where he's at. But the guy I'm going to say, just for fun, and let's not be totally serious about it here, but the guy most likely to just mess with everybody and go, how is this guy a thing? Is Payne Durham with Tampa Bay. Okay. Because to me, he had the best hands in the class. He is tough as nails at making the catch. He is slow as molasses. But he's a big physical dude who he's that dude at the YMCA in basketball who's like Bob's age, but in my shape. But somehow ends up having like Division I game. He was a Division I All-American, and you just feed him in the lane and he scores, and he's got like an unstoppable hook shot and just can like hit a variety of moves, and he's slow but smooth. And Payne Durham is that guy that it'd be my dark horse to say, next thing we know, he's the guy with the 10 touchdown season that we'll never see again, but he'll be a valuable player in the red zone for them because of what he does so well.
There we have it. My education continues. I hope you all enjoyed this as I'm learning the rookies. I hope you're learning more about them as well, except for John Bonneville knows everything about all the rookies anyway.
Yeah, man, he could have done the show.
I appreciate it. Always appreciate all you coming. I'll be back here on Saturday for an Ask Me Anything live stream. Be back on the radio on Saturday. Mike Dempsey and myself, the usual time, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. There might be a guy named Matt Waldman joining us on that program as well. John Bonneville, the 6 hours of riot. I believe the riot is about to begin. I have my shield and my mace ready to go. And also Friday, check out my new video starting, this will be the third week, but just the top headlines, quick digestible thing. If you haven't been following along all week, you'll get some snarky chicanery from me, as well as a little information. So who knew? I'm capable of that at times.
Can we get John Bonneville as like my relief player? So like when I get penalized in the box with Mike Dempsey, that he can come skating out.
There we have it. We have it.
All right.
Appreciate y'all for coming. Look forward to seeing you all. By the way, check out footballguys.com. All kinds of great stuff there, including my weekly notebook available every Monday. So check that out if you get a chance. Appreciate it ever so much and appreciate your time and attention. We'll see you on Saturday.
I had to think about that one.
I can't.
Who knows?